Welcome to video number 2 on building our Streamdeck trackball controller holder. You remember in video 1, we scanned our Resolve mini panel. We took that scan into Fusion 360 and we built a mock Resolve mini panel inside Fusion 360 using the dimensions from the scan. We then brought in a mock of the Streamdeck, positioned that in an orientation where we could try to have 2 Streamdecks next to the panel. That's what we want to build a box around today. We want to build a box that can hold the Streamdecks and eventually hold our trackball as well. We want it to all incorporate as nicely as possible into the side of the DaVinci Resolve mini panel. So let's go into Fusion 360 and see what the next step is going to be. So we know the dimensions of the sides and the length of the Streamdeck that we need to build, or the box that we need to build. So I'm building what is called a sketch to those dimensions. I can then take that sketch and I can extrude it into a full box shape. And the size of the box at this point isn't important. It just has to be roughly big enough to fit my Streamdeck in it depth-wise. So there is my first box. Now we're going to take this box and we'll position it underneath our first Streamdeck, our upper Streamdeck. Now we do want to try to get the angle of the box to match the Streamdeck as closely as possible. And as much as we could try to eyeball it, a better way of doing it is to align it. We can align the face of the box with the face of the Streamdeck. That will put them both at the exact same angle. And there we go. So now they are at an equal height to each other and an equal angle to each other. Now in positioning this box, obviously we want it to be aligned with the back of the Streamdeck as well. And again, we don't really want to just eyeball it. We want to do an accurate alignment. So once again, I'm going to align this face with this face. That puts them perfectly flush with each other. Now, remember that the lip of the Streamdeck is going to add 2 mils onto our box. And that lip is not represented in my mock-up of the Streamdeck. So I'm going to move that box up 2 millimeters past the Streamdeck. And in the end, we will have that 2 millimeter buffer on all 4 sides of the Streamdeck. And it's basically rinse and repeat at this point. We want to make sure that our box is flush on the other side as well, with a 2 millimeter gap added into it. That will essentially give us the first shape of our first box. Fairly simple once you have gotten into the hang of building these types of things. And then our next step, we're going to, of course, duplicate that box and repeat the actions to build our second box holder underneath the lower Streamdeck. And we'll just speed this up because the process is exactly the same. Align, offset, align, offset, align, offset. And here we are with 2 boxes, both ready to encase a Streamdeck. Now we do want, in the end, this to be one complete box. We don't want 2 separate boxes, so I'm just going to manipulate these so that we can try to fill in the gaps between the 2 boxes. Again, very rough at this stage. I did just eyeball this. I'll be honest, I will not be surprised if once this is all said and done, this kind of becomes version 1 of a model, and then I can use it to refine the entire process and get a nicer looking shape once everything is proper size-wise. So what I'm doing here is I'm building an extension box. So this is a box to encompass the 2 little boxes I've already created, because what I want to do is I want to combine all the boxes together into one solid shape. And that's a little difficult with these boxes being at the angles they're at. So I'm building a third box that can essentially think of it as a piece of clay that can totally encompass these other two boxes. Once I get it to the right size and shape to make sure it totally fills my boxes but is not any wider than they were originally, then I can combine that with my original boxes together, and I'm left with one really odd shaped box that can then be used in the construction process. So once we get it so that they're all together, we combine them together and we are left with one big shape. Now that big shape is a little too big, so I'm going to just sneak the back in, get it a little more flush with the original back. There's a little lip on the top here. I'll try to bend it down. Again, this is very rough stages at this point, but it gives me an idea visually of what this could look like. Now we are also too far height-wise, because as you can see, the mini panel is much higher up. The base of the mini panel is much higher up than the base of my box. So I'm going to create another box along the baseline of the mini panel, and I'm going to use it as a cut tool. Make sure it totally encompasses our new combo box here. I'm going to use this new box as a cut tool to lop off the bottom of that box that I just constructed. We are now left with a shape that is the same ground plane height as our mini panel. Now is the time we want to take our odd shaped box and turn it into a shell. We obviously can't just fit a Streamdeck into this solid piece of plastic. We need to cut a shape out that will hold the Streamdeck. So again, this is another combined effort. So we're going to select the Streamdeck, we're going to select the box, we're going to join them together, but we're going to use the Streamdeck to cut a hole in the box. And we will do that with each Streamdeck. That will leave us with a nice shell to put the Streamdecks in. Now, how deep does that hole need to go inside this box? That I do not know at this point. So that is, again, something that once we've done a bit of a test on, we will figure out how deep they need to be. For now, I'm just going to take them deep enough to make sure they are definitely deep enough. I don't want to print off a lot of extra plastic when I build these either. So really this shell, this box that I'm building, I do want to be mostly hollow. I want it structurally sound enough that it will stand up to the Streamdecks and not moving around on my desk, but I don't want to print up a kilogram of plastic just to house these things either. So I'm going to drag the shell or the cutout section inside to mostly make these boxes hollow. Now I've turned on what is called analysis section here. So this is kind of like an x-ray view of the middle of the box. I just wanted to see how much plastic is still being wasted inside this box, because at some point I'm going to want to create a way of hollowing that out as well. Again, I don't want to print any more plastic than I need to for these devices. And I also want to make sure my base of this shell is thick enough to withstand a printout and be able to have some solid textures to it. We also have to create holes in the shell for my USB cables. Now my trackball and my Streamdeck, they all have the cables coming out of them. The Streamdeck, they are coming out a little closer to the bottom. The trackball, and looks fairly centered. The trackball appears as though it is, again, 2/3 of the way towards the bottom. Now, yeah, we could measure and get an exact amount, but I usually build these big enough that it doesn't have to be that precise. And again, it's a cutting tool. I'm basically building a drill bit here. So a square with a circle is what we're going to end up building. We'll combine those together so it'll turn itself into a bit of a keyhole cutter. I can then take that keyhole cutter and use it to cut out my shapes inside of the box itself. So we'll combine them together. I'm going to move it over, drop it down. Now we do want the top end to get cut out because we want to be able to drop the cable in. We don't want to run the cable through here. We want it to drop in from the top. And we will center it on the model. Now I did just eyeball where center was on this. We'll see if it's correct when we do our test print. Once we're happy with that, we're going to do another combine and cut function, but I'm going to keep that tool around so that I can use it again on the second Streamdeck box. So there's my keyhole cut, and we'll do the same thing on the upper Streamdeck box. Once we know we're going to hit everything, again, we do a combine with these two items with a cut function, and I actually don't need to keep the tool after this one because those are the only two keyholes we need to cut in the box. But now we're left with two nice, neat keyholes for the USB cable to drop in. And then one other item that we need to do is a hole for the trackball cable to go through. And what we want to do is have the trackball cable run from the box that holds the trackball through the bottom of the Streamdeck box and out the very back of the Streamdeck box. So it's kind of a hidden cable management system that we're building. We're going to build a channel through this box for the USB cable to go through. But because it has to go through it, not drop into it, we do have to cut a hole that's big enough for the USB type B end to go through. And again, we're going to do a combine cut function. I am going to keep this tool kicking around because we're going to need it in its exact position when we add the trackball holder onto this, and we'll just use that exact same cutter to cut the hole from the trackball box as well. So for now, we're just going to turn off the visibility of this after we've done the cut function, and that should give us a nice channel that we can visually see, and it'll also keep the tool kicking around for when we need it in the future. But there's our channel. And then the last thing I have to do, again, remember I said I have this area in the middle that I would like to hollow out a little bit, so I'm not printing extra plastic. So I'm just going to draw two very basic shapes that will encompass a good portion of that section, and one more time a combine and a cut function. So it's just a hand-drawn sketch shape of a triangle that fits inside each one of these areas, and that will give us a nice hollow base that is not wasting a lot of plastic when we go to print this. Just taking that piece of plastic out of this base is probably going to drop the print time on this box down by several hours. Solid pieces like that take a long time to print. We're going to repeat that process on this other little section. We'll draw another triangle. We will extract it as a cut tool as well. And now we're left with a couple of hollow bases in the bottom of the box. So not a lot of wasted plastic in our print. We're going to see that I've actually dragged my cut perhaps a little too far, because both sides of the box that we've built are hollow on the bottom, which is fine, but they're also hollow on the sides. And I think from a visual standpoint, you can see right there the hollowness of the two items we just cut. I think from a visual standpoint, the inside part where the panel is can be hollow, but I think on this side, on the outside where it's a little more visual, that it would be nice to have those be solid. So again, with my history tool in Fusion, I'm just going to adjust how far I drag those cuts. And I'm going to drag them to the point where they are no longer outside of the edge. We'll put them inside and line them up with the rest of the shell so that we're getting essentially the same thickness of shell all the way through this device on this one side. And we'll do that to both of these items. The second one, we'll edit that one as well, and we will adjust how far it is cutting. good. And now we have a nice solid, we have a hollow on the one side and we have solid on the other side. Our next step, we're going to take this and we're going to dump it into Cura. That is the slicing program for the 3D printer. When we get into Cura, we discover the sad story that we are too big. We can't print this in one fell swoop. The stripes are actually showing us that this model is a little too big for our print plate. Now, the final print, we could actually stand it on its end and print it in one fell swoop, but for a test print, I'm dropping this down. I just want to print the top few millimeters of each one of these sections to make sure that the hole that I've cut in the box is the right size for the panel to sit in, or the Streamdeck to sit in. So I don't need to print that entire base plate and all that extra plastic that's underneath the build plate right now. I don't need any of that. Now, I thought Cura would allow me to print this now by dropping everything under it, but it is still sensing that it's a little too big, which I'm not sure why. Usually it lets me do this, but obviously something somewhere is confusing it as to my size. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this back into Fusion 360 and I'm going to duplicate my model. I don't want to ruin my original model here because we are going to ruin the duplicate model. And I'm going to build one more cut tool for this model, and I'm going to cut everything away from this except the parts that I want to print for this test. And now this I will send to Cura to print. This I think will fit on the build plate, and yes it does. You can see the stripes are gone. We're now a solid yellow. I just have to arrange this so that it sits flat on the build plate. So I have taken that to the printer. I have printed that device, and here it is right here. It looks not bad for a first run. Remember, this is a first test. I expect to be doing this at least 2 or 3 more times in partial stages to try to figure out if we are close, good. We don't want to print what could end up being easily a 20-hour print, to have that be our test saying, oh look, it doesn't quite fit. So here is our first test print. And if we put the Streamdeck in it, we see that the size is actually perfect from a fitting of the Streamdeck. We do also, however, see that my hole for the USB cable is not quite as perfect. I'm a little too off-centered. My option would be either to enlarge the hole a little bit for the USB cable or move it over towards center. We'll probably move it over towards center. The lower Streamdeck, same thing. The size is perfect. The hole for the USB cable is not. They line up with each other, so the fact that one is out means they are both out. We'll do what we should have done the first time. We will measure the hole and we will put it exactly where it should be. So, but size-wise, I think we're pretty good. Angle-wise, let's take a look. The angle looks close. It does look very close. If we were to put that against the silver and that against the black, it's pretty close. Now again, I had mentioned the idea that these two square pieces are trying to fit into a fairly curved section. So there's going to be a little bit of give and take, but I think from a size and an angle standpoint, we're pretty close. I think we could actually separate these out a little bit more, get that first one up a little higher, and drop the second one down and have it more on the second section here. And so we're going to go back into Fusion 360. We're going to modify a little bit this. Change the hole for the USB cable, and I think we are going to work a little bit again on layout because it's not quite there yet. So that will be what we do in part 3 of this video. Now, I warned you at the start, this is going to take several videos. It's not going to be a snap my fingers and it's done. It's going to be a bit of a battle for me to get to the point where I'm happy with how this box works. So I hope you've stuck with it for this entire part 2, and I hope you come back for part 3, and we'll see how much we can improve on this to our next stage. Thanks for watching.